This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
I'd like to call our April 18th meeting Board of Finance to order. We do, as usual, have a full agenda. First item, minutes from our regular meeting of March 21st. Everyone's had a chance to take a look at them. Any questions or comments on them?
I want to thank Ms. Ellen for the adjustments made to the minutes in order to more accurately reflect what occurred last month. And I would also like to make a motion in favor of accepting those minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nothing really on the old business, new business. March reports for expenditures. Questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Ed, in the page 4 of the libraries, the maintenance. So we're encumbering money there. Is that related to any of the items that we've discussed about, like, lighting and security, or is this something else?
No, I think a big part of it is painting that we had talked about doing for them, so we're trying to get some of it done piece by piece.
So it's only the painting, nothing to do with security?
No,
We did put some dollars back into the budget under capital. Is that,
10,000.
we did put,
10,000 back into library maintenance and repair, or added it to it, actually.
Ed, on page 6, we got a personal policy. We got OSHA. It's through the roof. Can you help us out here?
No, I haven't looked at that line in a while. I know it's a little bit over, but I'll have to get back on that one.
Okay. And also, following page, cultural center.
Yeah, we had converted it from oil to gas over there, and we haven't got, I don't think we've gotten the reimbursement in the account yet. So we've done the work, but we're just waiting for the reimbursement for it.
Okay.
And on that same area, page, but the maintenance, we're encumbering more for maintenance. For what?
Which line?
The maintenance and repair, town building? So we're already over, but we're encumbering more, so I'm just wondering what that is.
Well, we've had issues with the heating in the building. We've had issues with, there was some flooding in the assessor's office at one point that wasn't covered by insurance, that we had to pay for that. So we've had several big ticket items we had to take care of.
anything else on expenditures?
Just the last page. We have a speed display traffic counter under capital. That's not, we haven't purchased that yet?
No, it's from police, they haven't given me anything yet.
Okay. That's it, thank you.
Anything else on expenditures? Revenue?
Any unexpected revenue?
Is that
I'm sorry, any expected revenue?
No state money
Yeah.
given, sorry.
But I have surprise revenue.
Surprise revenue?
That's for next year.
I know.
Did we get any updates on MRSA? Didn't we submit?
I haven't got anything back.
Nothing.
From them yet,
So it's been what, like 2 months?
no. I'd say like 5 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks, yeah.
Is that, well, I remember, I think somebody asked.
Before the last
Yeah, we-
meeting, yeah.
Before the
Somebody-
I
last
think we
meeting,
did right
so-
before the last meeting.
All right, because I remember somebody asked about it, so we have no update on that.
No, I haven't got anything back from them yet. And Victor in Public Works keeps reminding me. so
Yeah, well, I don't
forget,
blame
so,
them, right?
yeah.
Because that's a big issue for town services. Okay, I guess I'll ask next month.
Revenue? 7%?
No, I didn't see it there.
Motion state. If nothing on revenue, special
Yeah,
fund?
no, just on the revenue, could you review once again the line item interest of the short-term investments? Just that.
Review it?
Interesting.
That was the one I omitted from the budget.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So what's there is over budget.
yeah, well, obviously, yeah, I know, but that interest comes from just our...
The cash on hand, right?
Our cash on
All our
hand.
investment, yeah.
Okay, very,
CDs and money market.
very nice placement of it, very nice.
What we did, Michael, was we moved some money into accounts, 2.7%, I think, Ed, was the number. So Ed and I reviewed all the investments, the accounts, and moved it into higher interest-bearing accounts, and that's why you see that, so.
Special funds? And Board of Ed.
My only comment on the Board of Ed, because it shows everything that they're spending, is that report with the grants. We have to do something about that report. It doesn't tell you, like on the special funds, it doesn't tell you what came in when. Like on special funds, we have current month, what we received in. You can't, there's no totals, and you don't know, unless you're comparing side by side, what came in. It just says expended to date. What came in current month would be nice, so we know. And there's no totals, which I've been asking for totals for a long time. I don't mind mocking it up for it and sending it to them, but this
You know,
report.
Dan, it may not be a bad
That'd be a good
idea.
idea.
You want to give her a self-format and send it to them?
All right, I'm gonna get
And I'll
this.
forward it to them.
All right, it frustrates me every month. Okay, I will do that. Make sure, Helen, that's in the minutes for me to do it.
Anything else on Board of Ed? Can I have a motion to accept the reports as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We really have no other business. We move to finalizing our 18-19 budget. In your packet, you have a revised number and you have a decrements page. Mike, you wanted to say something on the decrement page? Or before we start?
Well, the way that I start every year is just to thank the public for their participation in the last public hearing. We do observe what occurs in that meeting, but that's not the only feedback that we receive. At least my impression of the meeting is that there was not great support for the budget as it was in the March meeting. And after I reviewed everything that occurred during that meeting and during the Board of Selectmen meeting on April 5th, it did appear that the medical response capability of this town is a major concern. It's a rising concern. We did receive a letter from a fellow citizen, Jerry Argentino. He requested support for Sally Buemi's proposal for weighted duty labor assignments to address the time period when simultaneous medical calls usually occur. And I was prepared tonight to make a formal request to add 2 paramedics to improve the town's medical response capabilities, both in terms of time and personnel. But at the same time, other solutions started to be presented to us as well. Now, we know that some people in town see this as a critical need, and so we're not going to disregard it. A personal analysis from another citizen, Nancy Barrett, was also received and distributed to the members of this board, where there were many variables that were explained, variables that contributed to the problem, along with some suggested remedies. So After conversations with that I have had with the first selectman and with the finance chairman, I'm willing to hold off on any request for additional personnel so that this issue can be further explored and alternative solutions be examined. I'm going to yield now to the first selectman, who I believe has a proposal that he'd like to make to the board here.
All right, so at the public meeting back in early April, I referenced the fact that I really could not support a budget that has a 1.71 mil increase, and I don't support it. And in a subsequent newspaper article, I mentioned that I'm not supporting the budget. I'm not going to the public in a referendum with 1.7 mils. I'm not going to do it, period. So we then, as a result of that, we have to go back to the drawing board and bring this budget down, which is what you're going to hear tonight through some of the decrements that we'll get to later. The plan originally was to not do anything on adding firefighters. I've met with the fire chief, the president of the union, 2 of the fire commissioners representing each political party, and I said that, look, we're not going to be adding 8 firefighters. Respectfully, I listened to each of them and their views. At the same time, Michael reached out for me, Mike Hallahan here on the Board of Finance, and requested a meeting with Ed Swinkowski and myself, and the chairman here, Mr. Monaco. So we met earlier in the week, and I came up with a compromise solution that in the contingency that was in the original budget, it included $300,000, which we normally would put in, plus another $250,000. That $250,000 originally was put in contingency to address some sort of concept in the future on how to address a more amplified emergency service format. We were prepared to take the $250,000 out after my meetings with the fire department, the union, and the commissioners. So I came up with a proposal, and again, this proposal was precipitated by Michael reaching out, asking for a meeting earlier in the week with myself, Ed, and Rich, as I mentioned. So what you're going to hear tonight is part of the proposal is this. I'm going to set up a committee to include Ed, 2 members of the Board of Finance, and the fire chief. And that committee, with the fire chief involved, is going to examine options on how to amplify the support for emergency medical services. As part of the proposal that I gave to Michael, Rich, and Ed, what we could do is, you'll hear it tonight, is add $140,000 into the $300,000 of contingency for $440,000. We wouldn't keep it in contingency. We would book it as a line item somewhere, emergency management services. Ed will work that out. And that would give the committee several months to come up with some recommendations. And if there's recommendations that make sense, we have a half a fiscal year funded starting in January, which is $140,000. So in effect, the $140,000 for half of this fiscal year that we would add tonight would equate to $280,000 in a calendar year or a fiscal year. So we would propose setting up the committee. I spoke with the fire chief today. He's on board. I spoke with the chairman of the fire commission. He's on board. The committee will include representation from both political parties, from the Board of Finance, and Ed and the chief. And we would start the committee right away, and the committee would do their analysis on identifying other ways to further support emergency services in town. And that was my proposal.
And hopefully, this board, this workshop group, will be able to report back to the Board of
Board of
Finance
Selectmen.
and Board of Selectmen. I would hope by either late summer or during the fall, in order for this to be incorporated, their ideas and suggestions in the next budget cycle.
Yes, and we also have to keep in mind that whatever that report shows, we have to keep the fire commission totally communicated with also.
Yes.
The chief is going to be on, I'm not going to be sitting on the committee, I just want everyone to know. There'll be one representative from the Democratic Party, one from the Republican Party, Ed and the chief, and then I'll be part of the updates that they come up with.
Sounds like a plan.
Well, yeah, but meanwhile, in order to try to continue to address what may be occurring out there today, it is hoped that the chief and you, the first selectman, might be able to at least try to find the cause of many of the frequency of calls that are existing right now. And there's no need to wait until this committee comes out with some suggestions to act on your own in order to try to mitigate and improve the situation. Because if there is a flaw in the system right now that's exposed, that you know about, don't wait to fix it.
So to that point, I've asked the chief to set up a meeting with myself and him and Yale New Haven Hospital to analyze the calls that are coming in at the urgent care center. Now, I did this about 2 weeks ago with the chief. So the Chief Paul will be in the process of doing that. The fire chief's on vacation with his children this week, so there will be a meeting to identify with Yale's top management the types of calls that we're responding to. And, you know, my goal was to have the chief involved with that, for them to present to us their expectations of the calls that we should make, you know, in terms of 911 or when the calls come in. You know, there is, from what I understand, a layered level of calls. There's tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 to kind of simplify how they would break out. I think our fire department is a part of that tier, but we just want to make sure from Yale what their perspective is and what their expectation level is. So that's one thing we're doing. And we're having a lot of dialogue with the fire department to see how we can solve this. Now, keep in mind, last summer, we formalized an 8-man shift which added $300,000 to the overtime line to help amplify, you know, the service back then, because we were like 7-man shifts even though we're supposed to be 8. We added the 8th man, and that added the overtime. We've since delineated the overtime in the budget with the chief's help in terms of, you know, giving it more clarity in terms of what the overtime's for.
Right.
And Ed did the line delineation in the budget, right, Ed?
Right.
So-
Yes, and the public should know that you and this board here have always tried to adequately address and support the emergency services in town. Now, you had a very good slide in the public hearing, or I'm sorry, in the Board of Selectmen meeting, that came partially from the information that Tim Doheny requested to try to ascertain the degree, the amount of support, the dollars that this town has put out throughout the recent past in order to maintain and improve our emergency services. And it is remarkable, and I want to thank you for making that presentation to the public.
Well, and I think Ed has copies of that, what I showed at the meeting. There's $12.8 million we put in the fire department since I've been in office. Now, let me say this, folks, that I am a huge supporter of the North Haven Fire Department. I lift weights with the firefighters. I work out with them, as I do with the policemen. We work out regularly. So I support public safety here. I sit on police officer standard training. I was appointed by the governor, the only chief elected official in the state to sit on police officer standard training to determine the rules and regulations on how to train police officers. So fire and police are very important to the town and to this administration. What you're seeing here is all the money we put in to the fire department down through the years. So we support them 100%. I am on a regular meeting schedule with the union president. The chief and I meet regularly. I'm in constant communication with the chairman of the commission. and even brought in the minority party for a meeting, a representative from the Fire Commission. So we've done a lot for the fire department, and we'll continue to support the fire department, and hopefully this committee and what you'll hear tonight is an example of, okay, we'll keep the conversation going.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, I wanted to mention, though, I was a little disappointed in some of the communication that did not occur regarding the move from mandatory 7-man shifts to 8-man shifts. Because, when the paramedics were approved years ago, we thought that part of the cost of the additional paramedics would go to a reduction in overtime, since there'd be 8 men filling essentially a 7-man shift. Last summer, when the chief and others made the decision to move to 8-man shifts, that's when the overtime started increasing at rates that we were not prepared for on this board. And that's when we looked at the expense report, that's why we were proclaiming a little bit of outrage. But now at least there's some method to the madness. There's some reasoning behind what was occurring.
Well, those numbers were every year.
Yeah, but it became a little out of control. So now that overtime has now been thrown into the formal budget. So this year, when you notice that there's a little increase in the total town budget, you can attribute $340,000 of it to the increase in fire personnel in labor time for the fire department, and this formalizes our approval of the 7 to 8 man shift. And so again, we are in 1 year at a time. We are looking to improve and respond to all of the medical stress that's put on the system.
Right.
So, again, so I don't want the firemen or the advocates of the fire department to somehow believe that because we're not adding people, that we're not adding man hours. We are adding man hours in this budget, 340,000.
So that's the proposal, that's the plan. You're going to hear tonight, ladies and gentlemen, about how we're going to get this budget down from the 1.71 mils that was presented that I didn't support back earlier this month. And we're going to get it down to a rate, and then the process will be, we're going to go now back to a town hearing, another town meeting, and then a referendum. So that tees it up.
So one comment. This new commission.
Committee.
New committee. You have a goal of the end of August to finalize, or is that just an arbitrary date? And secondly, will the Board of Finance members be updated?
Yeah.
The goal is, as Michael said, probably by the fall, to have recommendations that we can give to the Board of Selectmen. Obviously, since 2 of us are members of this board, as things unfold, we will update this board as well.
Great.
As to what we're seeing, what the options we think are out there.
It's important that the chief be part of this. That was part of his original request, which I agreed to, and he will be part of it. Okay?
Super.
So, Ed, one of the things, as we move to the document page, one of the things we're doing is adding 140. We'll define a line item name for it, put it into the budget. I don't want to really leave it in contingency.
No, I wouldn't either.
Because you won't be able to transfer it, so if we just label it enhanced public safety, whatever you want to call it, put 140 in revised budget.
I'll find a place marked
Okay.
for it.
Other than that, if you just look through the list, sanitation tipping fees went down 50. We're taking the 250 out of contingency that we actually put into bookmark this item. Town insurance with the new numbers went down 200. We have a reduction in debt of 396. an additional 60,000 in lighting when we went to the LEDs. We're eliminating the extra vehicle for fire, the command vehicle, or the additional, we have 2 vehicles, we're not adding a third one. Public Works, the mapping is being pushed off. Both tank replacements, Monowese, we might still be able to squeeze Monowese in this, might still be able to squeeze
Yeah, can I
Monowese.
just go over that GIS we're going to do through LoCIP funds?
That's gonna go
I
through
checked that
LoCIP.
out. so
I'm
that's gonna
sorry, that's
take-
correct.
Taken care of through LoCIP. The other two, the time, we still have till the next budget year to do the
To take the
tank
big one out.
at Public Works for
Public
230,
Works.
because it's in September. So as long as we get it started before then, so we'll have next budget go around to take care of it. And the Monowese one, we have undergoing now, so we get that done, because DEP, state's putting pressure on it, so we're trying to get that out of here.
So we'll push the 230 off to next year. We're still within the timeframe to remove the
You're
tank.
saying that, oh, so,
Monowese is being done.
it's being done.
The GIS mapping is coming.
So it'll be
from
taken
LoCIP.
up from current year funds?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Monowese, it has to be in next year's budget. We have to do it next year.
Yeah, okay.
Multi-cover with the library restoration, we'll just take another 60. We're just building funds there. Board of Ed with the revised medical, it went down 154 in that last meeting, which drops us $1,570,000.
Right.
Actually, it doesn't, because we just put a 140 back in there. So $1,430,000 plus or minus. Any questions on the deck page?
Well, before I give it to Pat over here, just the debt service reduction, the amount that we have to pay on debt service every year. How could something like that change?
Because if you recall, when we went out to bid, or did the project for the middle school, there's $5 million worth of debt service in the project. So we've been making those payments on the notes for the past couple of years through there. And there's room for me to use some of the money to cover another payment and take it out of the budget. I was trying to get it in the budget. If it happened, it happened. If not,
Okay,
I'll
take a
it out
payment,
of-
okay.
out
Because
of
I was
there.
going to say, if we knew that there was a lower amount in March, why wouldn't we have just made this reduction in March instead of April now?
Well, because I'm trying to keep it constant, I'm
Yeah.
trying to budget it.
Yeah.
I don't want to have wild swings in debt.
You found a little piggy bank. That's good.
Cookie jar.
Cookie jar. Okay.
Gotta have those.
We like that.
Nice work, Ed.
Way to earn your pay. Yeah, very good. Now, did we take, did we use any fund balance at this moment on this, on any of these changes?
Yes, we did.
Yes, we don't have revenue side.
It's on the,
It's on the revenue page. We took more out of,
7. It's on page 7.
And if that's the case, how does that sit with our design target?
We're dropping below our target value, our target number.
Right.
We're temporarily below our target.
Yes.
And let me
Okay,
comment.
but that may change again by the end of the year, should there be a surplus, right?
Yes. So let me explain this, okay? That in tough times, which all of us as municipalities are facing, many of the municipalities, and I'm talking to the other mayors, it's a time we have to use fund balance to mitigate the tax burden for our citizens. And we've been very diligent on maintaining and building and trying to perpetuate a fund balance here. And this is why we're AAA rated financially. And this is one of the many reasons why we haven't been downgraded as a municipality like other municipalities have been downgraded in Connecticut because of the state of Connecticut. There have been municipalities that, because of the state economic condition, they've been downgraded immediately. We haven't, because they like the fact that we run a prudent financial government. They love the economic development that's happened and the projections that will continue to happen. The rating agencies like the fact that there's stability in the management here, and they love the fact, coming back to economic development, that there is a tangible plan of not only what's happened, what's going to happen, and what the future projects are that yours truly is involved with. So we've been able to maintain this AAA rated status. We will dip below the 8%, and we're hoping that if there's a surplus, we can build that back. And coming back to this year's budget, 75% of the time's elapsed on the expenditures, and we're 74.3% spending. So we're right on target. We're not overspent, we're slightly underspent. So we're doing very well in managing the expenses. And the revenue, we're confident that that revenue number is going to be met, perhaps even exceeded, which will lead to a surplus potentially. Okay.
And the only other thing that you mentioned, Michael, our collection rate, we moved it up a little bit, just to try and keep,
Yeah, I don't have my sheet with me that I'm so glad that Mr. Swinkowski gives to us every March. I think it was March. But the collection rate for the last few years has averaged what?
It came out to about 98.48.
0.48. Yeah.
So it was right on the money at
Right.
98.
Well, yeah.
I'm always trying to be a little conservative on it.
Yeah, well, we are always conservative in our budgeting, and I did not really like this change. This is something. This is I don't want to say it's a one-time change that could have been used in any given year, and every year is always a challenge. Why it's happening right now before this budget even goes out for public approval at the May referendum, I'm hesitant for this to have occurred. Now, there may be, by the way, that change, that collection rate change adds up to how much in terms of revenue?
250?
444,000.
440,000. Well, I think that there's a solution to part of that 440,000, possibly, and it comes from some suggestions that Pat Brown might like to make.
All right, well, Pat passed out something, but before we get to that, Ed and I did, a 10-year look back on this, right?
Yeah, we did, right. That's what
So
I
this
brought
isn't
back.
just a one-time gimmick. We did a 10-year look back. We spent a lot of time on the financial aspect of this government. We did a 10-year look back on the collection rates, and that's why we bumped it up this year, because that is about what we've collected for the past 10 years. This isn't just a pie-in-the-sky projection. This is with careful and critical analysis of what's going on here in the last 10 years.
Right, and the last time we did this, probably 6-7 years ago, it was more volatile, and the 98 was more of a
Well, right,
barometer than the
when I say we
98.5.
have discussions
Right.
before, I
Yeah.
mean that it's been asked to change it to 98.5, and this board has resisted that.
Yes, right.
Yes.
And I thought that was good, proper, conservative budgeting on behalf of the town. Now, again, there's a chance right here from some suggestions, if they're taken, that this 98.5 can be changed to 98.25.
All right,
But let's just, let us
Pat.
listen to Ms. Brown.
I think that we might have additional revenue. In going over the March revenue report for this year, I noted the 9-month figure, actual figure, is higher than the budgeted amount in next year's budget. So I looked at the 9-month actual plus the projected 3 months to look at what the total revenue might be this year to plan for going forward next year. And one of the items on the spreadsheet, the first one, was the interest on short-term investments that Mike had mentioned earlier. And budgeted for next year is $100,000. But if you take the $213,000 raised thus far and add the next 3 months, I'm projecting that figure could be $347,000. So if it truly, and it might be off, projecting is never perfect, but if we're putting in 100,000, I would think we could add another 150,000 if we're looking at $347,000. Does that make sense, Ed?
Well, I see what you're saying, but if you look back at last year, it was only, for the fiscal year ended 17, it was only just over 100,000.
No, I know.
So I'm
but-
trying to meet somewhere in between, maybe, somewhere in between would probably be a
So-
good result.
So if we had 100 in the budget now,
Right.
based on my figures that you have, what would be a safe amount to put in addition to what's there? I thought 150 would bring it to 250.
So you, Pat, you're saying you add 150 to it? Add 150?
Yes,
Well,
or
realize-
100.
Realize our unappropriated fund balance is dropping 650,000, because we're dropping below to 8, so you're,
Right, I can't push everything to the limit, because I will
His
never replenish
interest-
fund balance.
the interest that he's collecting is gonna reduce. We're not gonna have as much liquidity. We took 650 unappropriated fund balance out to put into this budget. So that's gonna
That's 10%.
diminish.
That's 10%.
Yeah, so that's gonna
Yeah.
diminish the
10%
money. So I'm just one of the things. I don't know what else we use that comes up with your number.
But there must be some additional amount we can put in for the
Yeah, I-
revenue.
I think it's reasonable that that can be bumped up at least 100,000. All
So-
right.
okay, so-
All right, what's the next one you
I'm open
had?
to it.
The next one,
Whatever we want, if it doesn't come in, it doesn't come in.
Look, I'm open to your suggestion, Pat, but we don't want to overestimate it, because if it doesn't come in, then we're stuck with that as a line item.
well, of
deficit.
course,
So,
Let's see what the next one you have, Pat.
okay,
well, the next one, fire fees, and I know that there was a large sum of money added recently.
Because of Amazon.
But, yes, and we have in the budget $260,000 for next year. And I'm estimating that we could put in another 100,000, because with the Amazon fire fees that are in, the first 9 months actuals plus projection, it's 946,000 for this year. And I would think that we could add another 100,000 to fire fees projection.
But the Amazon fee, that was their initial building cost fees. So there's no more money coming from Amazon towards it.
No, but there was other development, I thought, coming in.
Yeah, but again, it's all by size. Do we have enough development coming in that you'd be comfortable increasing that number?
well, yes, there's a lot of development coming in, that I can tell you. But Ed, what is the FY17 number compared to 260?
Well, for 16, 17, it was 123,000.
All right, so we went from 123 to 260 then.
Yeah, you more than doubled.
All right, so Pat, so we more than doubled what's in the current budget.
I see that.
You still feel strongly that we can add another 100,000 to already doubling that number?
I think we can safely add 50,000.
Okay, I mean, I'm open to
100.
that.
And the recyclables is a small sum, but I think that's going to be more popular, so I added 500 more to the revenue for that line item. And community services, I just think the need is going to continue there. We've budgeted 175, I think, based on the data. We could add another 25, and that would bring it to 200,000.
Now, there's expenses associated with this, of course, too, but I'm open to that, too. I think that's a growing thing. Yep. All right, Pat, look, I like your thoughts here, okay? So if we put the 25,000, and of course, I'm seeing this for the first time, so forgive me.
Sure.
If we add the 25,000 to community services and added 50 to fire fees, that's 75. Then the question becomes, what is everyone comfortable on the short-term investments?
I don't know if I'd increase it more than 50.
I'm more comfortable with that than any of the other changes here.
No, I'm actually more comfortable with the other ones than that one.
So if we went 50 on that one, on the short-term interest, that picks up 125,000 then, Pat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and you want to, is your next question to increase expenditure to offset some of these other items? What's your
Well, wait a
expense
minute,
reduction?
where
I'm
are we
sorry.
with the interest?
I'm sorry,
What
just-
was the decision on?
I would think 50.
50.
So adding 50 to the 100.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be 150
Right.
revenue, okay.
So 50, 50, and 25.
50, 50, 25 in the recyclables.
No, I meant the first line item, which is the interest on short-term.
We
It's
would
$100.
Increase to 50,000.
An
Okay,
increase of 50,000.
An increase
yes.
of 50,000.
so that's 150,000. right?
Fires increase 50,000, there's 100.
Right.
And community service, we'll add your
20.
25.
Okay,
So that's
125.
125.
Ed, we're good with that? I'm fine with that.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
And
Pat?
Yes.
I think you did a nice
Good job,
job.
Pat.
You did a nice job on this analysis. Are you comfortable with the 125?
I think we could go higher, but I'll settle for 125.
Michael, what's your thought?
I would like to know if the collection rate can be changed to 98.25.
We're just gonna take Pat's money away now.
That's right. But what I'm saying is that we're changing, we're taking one assumption on this and replacing it with another.
Pat, do you have a problem doing that? After all your hard work?
No, the idea was to get additional revenue and whatever it takes to do
You wanna
that.
adjust it, just balance it out
Well, what you're
accordingly?
doing now is
Oh, you
you're
don't
gonna
want to change the
take
collection rate?
222,000 away from the collection.
No, no, not dropping it back to what, no, not dropping it completely back, just,
No, to 98 and a quarter.
Right, 90 and a
Yeah.
quarter.
That's half of what I said 444 was the increase to 98 and a half. You're gonna take half of it away now, that's 222.
So you-
whatever tenths of a percent you need to make it so it balances out. Just take the 125
Off,
down.
okay.
All right, so I mean,
Good.
we just kind of shifted some numbers.
And does the mill rate go down?
No, you could basically what
No, because we're
Michael's
putting it
asking
back
for.
in the collection rate.
Michael's taking away the 125 that you,
That's your partner.
Could you sit
So-
on the other side, please? The goal was to reduce the mill rate.
I mean, all we're doing by doing this is shifting, just shifting
Yeah, you
line
just
items,
shift
we're
your
not
line
gaining
items. That's what
anything.
Michael just.
Yeah, I
mean,
got
it's-
it.
Got that? You got what he did to you?
98.47.
All right, we'll take some of it.
Just,
that-
just take a tenth off of the collection rate, 98.4. What would that, how much is that, would that take? A tenth of a percent? That'd be.
40,000.
I want the mill rate to go down.
No, he said 444 is a half a percent?
In the case right now, yes.
So you're taking off 90,000 by reducing it 1/10 of 1%, which means that this, what we just did, becomes roughly 35,000.
Right.
You reduce the mill rate. Maybe.
That was the goal.
Okay. Everything, you may not see it in the numbers, but every dollar's a dollar.
Yeah. Although we're adding 140 for the fire line.
Which is going to be in the projected mill rate that we show here shortly.
Okay.
Okay?
So what did we decide on this? I mean, you're not comfortable with the 10-year look back on an average collection rate, which the projected number here is still 0.2 of 1% less than the 10-year look back yet, right?
Yeah.
So,
Like I said, this is something we were very, very strict on this.
I know. We're pushing everything to the edge.
I know.
It was a hard budget. The man said we had to get down.
Well, I have two additional items.
What's your other two things, Pat?
Capital cuts.
You want to cut the license plate reader?
Yes, until next year, as well as the Martha Culver. I
Well,
think we-
remember, we did reduce it. You
I
wanna-
know.
We can reduce it
What-
the other 20.
Right.
Can we have to
As
keep
crazy
that-
as it
Can
sounds,
we have to
the
keep that
license-
project afloat, though? That's
It's only a token, it is only a
have
token
100
amount,
left,
it's like the library.
money down.
I know.
100 is left.
And as far as a license
That's what I'm
plate
trying to
reader
do,
is,
20.
Is that a must?
excuse me?
Is that a must this year?
I think it's a must because one of the biggest things that's hitting the police department right now is stolen cars,
Unlocked stolen
unlocked
cars.
stolen cars, but the reader will allow them to pick up plates from a distance and a lot faster. I think that's why the chief was looking for it, just because of the amount of auto thefts that are going on, not just in North Haven, but
Well, if the owners lock their cars, we wouldn't have this problem.
Yeah, well, you can't make
Can't do
people
that.
do that. I agree
So,
with Rich. I
I'm-
think we need that.
I think the reader
Reader.
needs to stay. That's one of the reasons we cut it.
So Reader stays and Martha leaves?
I'll give you 10. I'll split it with you.
God.
I mean, you're
Give me what
tough.
I want, 20.
I mean, just to keep it bookmarked, because you know what? Once something goes completely off the sheet,
It'll be all, you'll never get it back.
hard to get it back on the sheet.
Well, what about 5?
No, the 10 is good.
Come on, I'm being fair. I met you halfway.
Plaster costs a lot to recreate.
I don't know.
I bet you have to.
Fine. Good.
All right, we're good?
Martha was a good soul.
Martha was, yes. Anything else you have for us, Pat? That was very good.
No, I'm not.
You
I'm
done?
not speaking anymore. I'm done. Thank you.
We have a very nice board. Any other questions or comments on the sheet? The decrement sheet? Is there any other changes anyone else would like to suggest? Anything else we should entertain?
Mike, streetlights? No,
We covered it, yeah, Rich covered that.
Oh, you got it, okay.
Yeah. Bringing down the LED light and the street lights.
Yeah, I did that.
To 450, you really did that, yeah.
I went through the whole thing. If there's nothing else, Ed, if you want to just calculate the numbers out.
No, another 60,
What did we show?
because it's still,
So, yeah, so in other words, we,
I have 60 in it before, but now we're gonna add another 60. That's what I was talking about.
so down to 440.
Yeah, because we ended up with, yeah, let's see, all the LEDs are
Right,
in
so-
effect now.
All right, yeah, so what we're talking about here on a sidebar is that we were gonna reduce the streetlights another 60,000.
So it'll be 120 in this, it wasn't in the last decrement?
So
It wasn't in the
we're
last change?
So
First
you-
60?
Some of it.
So we're adding those. And the reason for it, just so everyone knows, is that about a year and a half ago, or actually about 3 years ago, I met with the UI about retrofitting all the streetlights in North Haven from the older bulbs to a more energy efficient LED. And what we're seeing is the savings on this right now. So because there was a transition, all the lights weren't retrofitted until within the last 12 months, we know that we can bring what was 560 in the original budget down to 440 for a savings of 120. Because starting in July, all of the streetlights are retrofitted with the LED. Actually, they're all retrofitted, so we should be capturing that savings. We were the third municipality in the state, or with the UI trading municipalities, to get this done. So that's saving us a significant amount of money. And the point here is we didn't capture the full savings in the first number of 560. I went to Ed and I said, I think we can reduce this based upon being involved with the retrofitting with the UI. So all LED, much more efficient, 440 from the original 560.
Okay, thank you, Michael. No one else has any comments? You gotta realize, most, at least the Republicans part of the board, we can meet, we can't meet with them except for at meetings. Everyone's been working on it diligently. Michael gave us directions, and we pull out all the stops, every place we can find something.
So before we try to memorialize these numbers, what started as a 1.71 mil increase, which I wasn't going to support, is down to a 0.69 mil increase. Am I right, Ed? That's the number we came up with?
It's about where it
Right,
should be.
subject to this change
Subject
right
to,
now.
but does that 0.69, that doesn't capture what we just accepted from Pat Brown, though?
Right, I'm gonna have to take, well, it's gonna go down a little bit.
It's going to go down a little
Yeah.
bit. Now, for what it's worth, these are discussions happening with all municipalities in the state. We didn't have a tax increase last year. So if this ends up to be a 0.68 or 0.69, that's an average 2-year of about a 0.34 increase. At a time when state funding is flat, when there's great uncertainty, and at a time when the cost of services continue to go up, and they are going up. And it's a delicate balancing act. This budget retains all services right now.
Actually enhances some,
It enhances some.
enhances public fire. As Ed's finishing up the numbers, anything else anyone wants to talk about related to the budget?
Oh, yeah, one more question. So what did we decide then on the tax collection rate of the 98.4?
Collection rate, I'll relent at this time. It can stay where it was.
Pat, you got all your money?
We have
So
to, we have to, we have to get this budget passed,
Yes.
so it definitely has to be
Yeah.
below .70. So 0.69, I think that's a number that.
It's gonna be
we all
probably
need to-
about
With Pat's changes, it may fall a little bit less than 0.69.
685.
We'll see. we gotta do the numbers here. What you're seeing for those watching on TV is kind of a work in progress. Well, Pat Brown presented some additional recommendations, which we just looked at, which is now being calculated as to what that would mean from our original thought of going from a 1.71 to a 0.69 increase.
No. That's, try it again.
You want to use the calculator in Michael's office?
Yeah, I need one that goes a little bit further than this.
Yeah.
I know my key's downstairs.
Okay. Go through that door there. And at the same time that we're doing this, I'll give the Board of Finance a couple of updates, okay, while you're doing that.
Sure.
So, you know, this budget still shows state revenue subsidization, which could change. We don't know. That's number one. We're working with OPM, our state legislators. My involvement with CCM, we've been testifying in Hartford to try to get clarity as to what we can expect. Still a little bit uncertain. The grant list is growing, this is an approximation, between $300,000 and $755,000 over the last few years, couple years. One of my goals for those watching on TV also, and to the Board of Finance, is to find a bridge till we get to that Amazon income, which will be 2 fiscal years from now. That Amazon income will be supplemented by additional projects that I'm personally involved with. As an example, the old Clintonville Manor. You'll see in this year, ground will be broken for a 104-unit senior assistant living facility. We will capture the full impact of Land Rover. We will capture the full impact of 33 Devine Street. I just brought in a company from Massachusetts to buy that building. They're putting money into it, and we got a new business, BYK, coming in there as part of an expansion in Connecticut. It's almost unheard of, having a business expand, as opposed to going from one municipality to another. We have a variety of other projects happening right now, and those projects include back buildings in the back of 333 State Street, which are being renovated, which will enhance the property value. I'm hoping to have a solution on the corner of Monowese Avenue and Route 103 Quinnipiac for that area where you see VIX. That's part of a development package. I have interested private equity people to come in and renovate some of the antiquated gas stations in town to put more property value there, which is more taxable income for us. We have brought in developers who've purchased plazas up and down Route 5. And those plazas over the next couple of years will be renovated. New tenants will be coming in. Those plazas specifically are north of Bradley Street. We have a developer that's put an offer on south of Bradley Street on the eastbound side. Kimberly Plaza's been purchased. I was personally involved with putting those parties together, so that will be under new ownership. On the west side, the old building, that's the old company that's been vacant for decades, that is in the process of being sold, and there will be a mixed use of retail and apartments there. So that bombed out building that you may see, if you're standing at Breakfast Nook looking across, that's part of a major renovation project. And I can go on and on this topic. The point is, these next couple of years may not reflect the full impact of that incremental revenue. But after 2 years, ladies and gentlemen, the income's going to be flowing in here. We're looking to expand with Medtronics, the largest employer, the largest taxpayer in town. I have big plans that I'm trying to accomplish in the next 2 years on that I can't share with people here tonight. However, that doesn't mean we should start spending against that incremental income. And that's another thing I'm going to be very bullish on, not having that money spent before we achieve it. So that's sort of a Board of Finance update as to what's going to be happening over the next couple of years. Ed?
What do you have for me?
I I don't get a drum roll.
There you go.
31.18.
Say
So
that again?
31.18 mils, so that's 0.65.
0.65.
Yeah.
So Pat, you just helped us get 4/10 off with your proposals, from .69 to .65.
Even though Michael tried spending it on you.
Yes.
It wasn't additional spending, it's
I'm
just
sorry.
accounting. It's
Pat, I wouldn't have done that to you.
accounting for a righteous purpose.
Do you have the numbers for me for the resolution? Still working, okay. We might have to go on to another story.
Any questions for me while he's doing that? Edward?
Do I have any questions for you?
It's a good book.
While that's doing the final numbers.
You gotta give me, the-
These are Martha Kohler's capital, right?
we don't
I
want a
could-
mistake at this point.
Yeah. I could say that I'm
Oh,
a
it doesn't bring it
little
up, the capital
disappointed
sounds
in the degree of cuts that occurred with education this year. We had a recent policy on this board of trying to give them what they asked for if we believed it was reasonable. And we did that for quite a while. But the cuts to education exceeded the savings that were found in the healthcare plan. And with their budgeting, you know, when they presented to us, they were pretty austere when it came to supplies and textbooks. So, I thought that they pretty much kept to our request not to come with an overinflated allocation request, and they did that. So, and it's quite uncertain as to whether any of the savings that the chairman here found, whether that's actually going to be the way that they apply the lower sum that they're given in this budget. But,
Yeah, as we didn't, the numbers were really only 500 and change on a $53 million budget. None of them related to the classroom. We suggested they don't hire another outside groundskeeper. And some of the increases in sundry items that they, you know, if you have 500,000 budgeted for it this year, keep it at 500, don't make it 550. That's kind of where those numbers came from.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it wasn't
Well,
anything that
yeah.
impacted the classroom. I didn't think it was fair to them to add personnel when we're still uncertain as to what's going on in the state.
I think they reduced some of their personnel numbers.
No, but they were actually adding.
They were adding some, they were adding.
They shift, they
a couple-
add.
Right.
They
adding a
added
couple
in this
positions.
classroom, they subtract, they added in Clintonville, subtract in Ridge. But they were also adding outside groundskeeper, which was, you know, it's a significant item too.
Well, because their increase is 2.72%, it is, again, something that is understandable and tolerable in this very difficult year.
Again, the same thing, realize in the last 10 years, they probably have increased 20% in expenses and probably have the same amount of reduction in enrollment. But there is no direct linear correlation between that.
Be sure to look at all the labor contracts, including the administrators.
Agreed.
And the bus
Agreed.
contract. Yeah,
As
we
to the
need,
source of that.
yeah, the bus
That would be
contract's
nice.
another
Yeah.
one. That's a big one.
We still think, yeah,
need to look at that closely,
Yeah,
as
Tim
well
was-
as
Tim was supposed
salaries.
to look into
Salaries
that.
killing you.
Salaries and the bus.
We also have the agreement with the Board of Ed to have one member of the Board of Finance sit in on the labor negotiations. So I'm open to suggestions as to who that should be.
and I will recommend again to them to use a labor lawyer, not
Our labor.
not an education, to negotiate salaries.
All right, so Ed, do you have the numbers?
Our first resolution. Resolved that the Board of Finance recommend a town government budget for fiscal year 2018-2019 in the amount of $45,864,552. Can I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Resolved that the Board of Finance recommend a Board of Education budget for fiscal year 2018-2019 in the amount of $53,052,836. Can I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Resolved that the total budget for fiscal year 2018-2019 in the amount of $98,917,388, town government of $45,864,552, Board of Education of $53,052,836, be presented to the annual budget town meeting to be held on Monday, May 7th, 2018. Can I have a motion?
Make a motion.
In this discussion, I just want to make sure one thing. Ed, you added the 140 back for the emergency management services, right?
There is a net increase of 70. You cut streetlights for 60, Martha Culver for 10, but added 140, so the increase is
Okay.
70 from your budget book.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None?
I'd like to say a couple words.
Okay, give me a second. That should finalize the fiscal year 18-19 budget, which will be moving to resolution. Before we go to public comment, any comment from board members?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, yes. Yeah. So this budget, which does not keep taxes from rising, is also a statement of our times, where we continue to support our labor force and address our capital needs. This revised, reduced budget represents a strong response to the public reaction to the March budget draft that we had here. Significant changes were made. Over $1 million was cut before the public hearing, and another 1.3 or $1.4 million was cut today. So we have listened and we've responded. However, some of these changes were made on some riskier assumptions, presuming that receipt of every last dollar. And there may be an optimistic estimate of the containment of costs concerning our self-insured health care account. But it's in the midst of, and all this is happening in the midst of uncertain revenue promises from the state. So, but although I worry that there's a couple too many assumptions, rosy assumptions within this budget, I do understand what we're going through here and the public's intolerance for significant tax increase, a tax increase. So based on the behavior of this board, though, from the past, if this budget does not pass, it seems that additional possibly damaging cuts are likely to occur, which might impact services such as education, fire, and police. And so I am urging support for this budget because this budget continues to do what a budget is supposed to do. It addresses the important responsibilities that we have here. It fulfills the town's role in local governance, and it preserves the services and infrastructure for the long-term future health of our town. I urge all voters to participate in the referendum and to vote yes on this budget.
Thank you, Michael. Any other board members? Public comment. Sherman?
Sherman Katz, Sherwood Drive. Just a couple of things. You talked about maybe as many as 6 to 8 months before you make a decision on what's going to happen in the fire department. With all the discussions that have been out there, the meetings I've been to, people I've listened to, there's a medical need. That's both from the fire department and the public. You're going to kick the can down the road another 6 months. You've taken $140,000 from a contingency budget that was overinflated to begin with, and you're going to use that someday for something. By the time you make up your mind, you may already have a union contract signed, which would mean trying to get it reopened. And if you remember at the selectmen meeting, you had the president of the union that absolutely flat out refused to have less than 8 men or 8 people. He wouldn't listen. He wouldn't hear of 2 people. I really think it's time that you go ahead and make a step. If you were in business, you would have made a step yesterday. But being in government, you want to go a lot slower. I think you're going too slow. And I think there are a lot of people that are going to suffer because of it. That's on the medical. I don't think I heard anything about paving roads. I know there is talk of paving roads.
Yeah.
This is one of the worst years for potholes I've seen in many, many years. And I think you're really going to have to get serious about increasing that pothole budget.
Yeah,
And I don't mean just skimming off a 1/4 of an inch and then paving it and having another crack come through 3 months later.
well, we have planned, Sherman, in May and September to pave roads. We got this built in for road paving this year too, right, for bonding?
Right, we approved 2 million last year, and then we used some of it now, and I
Right.
think we got less than $1 million left.
So the road paving will continue. We've talked about this. you and
But I think it has to be a better quality of road paving. We had someone get up and say, in a year, the same cracks came through his road. I know it's not, my road's not paved, but I've got 20-year-old cracks. in it.
Let me, that's a very good question, and I'd like to try to explain it. What the general public may not realize. There's 2 ways to pave roads. One is what every municipality does, which is what we do. We crown the road to create the drainage off to the sides. And the road then gets paved. If the road has had inherent cracks in it, we have the option to grind that road down to its basic surface, which adds about 2.5 times the cost to the road. Every town engineer across the state will say this. So by doing it the way we do it, if there's cracks in the road a few years down the road, there may be a couple of cracks here and there. This is why there's something called Sherman Crack Seal. It's a very inexpensive way to repair the road versus spending 2.5 times the $200,000 to grind that road down to its basic dirt. We would never catch up on road paving. This is not just North Haven. This is just about every municipality in the state.
We had the crack sealing at one time.
And we will still do that.
And they ran out of money for that.
So we're still looking at the crack seal. But I hear your point. It's a great question.
Is there any reaction to the governor's idea of giving $90 million to Hartford to get them out of debt? We've heard from Ganem and a little bit from Tony Harp, but I haven't heard anything from the majority.
The Board of Finance?
Pardon?
From the Board of Finance?
Well, it starts with money. I mean, somebody has to go after, form some kind of a group
Right.
to go after the governor, not to give $90 million of our money to Hartford. We're getting cut, and they're getting a heck of a benefit. And when you can get Tony Harp to say she's upset with it, you know there's something wrong.
We agree.
Just food for thought. The last thing I want to bring up is, and I know that you've been cutting, I don't want to say nickels and dimes, a few thousand here and a few thousand there. And you know what I'm going to talk about. And there are hundreds of cars in North Haven that should be registered in North Haven, not in Florida, not in Vermont. And every car that's registered out of state is revenue we don't get. I'm not going to say it's going to be several $1 million, but these are Cadillacs and Lincolns and cars that pay $500-600 a year taxes if they're registered in this town. And I have friends who register their cars out of town, and I barely talk to them now. So and I've told them that. I really think it's time that we get, you know, that license plate checker, maybe that could be part of the thing, to catch up to these people. So that's pretty much all I have to say.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else, please? Oh, Sally first.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Hi, Sally.
Sally Boehme, 5 Blossom Drive. First, I think the formation of this committee to look into other options or all options is a great idea. I notice it has 4 members, Ed Swinkowski, the finance director, 2 members of the Board of Finance, and the fire chief. That's 4 people. Sometimes it's best to have an odd number in a committee if they have any voting to do. I would recommend, if you would consider a 5th person, to have an odd number, one of the leaders of from the volunteer ranks. And the reason I say that is because for the past 6 months, I've been doing a great deal of research on fire service, providing fire service, and I've talked to people from all over the state that are in firefighting, as well as people within the town. And I think that I've reached some conclusions about the volunteer service. We've heard a lot of talk about the numbers dwindling and why, and I think that there could be things that could be done to improve the number of volunteers and to utilize them in a more effective manner. So I do love the idea. I think it's a great idea, but I would recommend that a volunteer leader be added to the committee.
We'll consider that. Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Next, comparing the budget from the public hearing to the one that was sent to me, not the final one that you did, I noticed one other funding source that increased. You guys talked about the $650,000 increase in funding from the transfer of the fund balance.
Unappropriate fund balance.
But there was another $200,000 increase from the public hearing budget to this one in building fees, right? It went from 1.1 to 1.3. And I just was wondering about that because, I have a few thoughts on that. First, if you look at the current revenue budget, we're only at, I think, 59% collection for this year. We're 750,000 under. We budgeted $1,850,000.
Yeah, with the fire fees.
Yeah.
Well, I was just looking at the revenue report. You've got it there. We budgeted $1,850,000, and we're about $750,000 according to the March 31st report.
Right, but fire
Under.
fees are over by 761, so the 2 of them together.
Right, I understand that, but I'm just talking about building fees. Fire fees are separate from building fees. Right? When you have construction, you pay building fees, which are based on a percentage of the cost of construction, and then there's fire fees based on square footage, if I'm not mistaken, right? So they are separate. But I just, I've been, so just looking at building fees, because last year, when we were at this time of year, when we were putting together the budget for the current 17-18, we increased that revenue line item, again, building fees, $1 million, with the explanation being we're expecting $1 million in building fees from Amazon. Now, I drive by there like once a week to see how they're doing, and they're making a lot of progress, but we're not going to get all that building fee, not fire fee, building fee in the current year. So when you increase the building fee to by 200,000, are you anticipating a shift of some of the building fees that you had earmarked for this current fiscal year to trickle into next year because the construction is behind schedule a little bit? You know, do you understand what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I do. And actually,
Yeah.
I was the one that asked Ed to add that, because I know what projects they have coming up. So what we did was, we did an analysis. We subtracted the 50% of the building fees out of our accruals. That was for Amazon. That was a one-timer.
Right.
And at the time that I asked Ed to add to the building fee line, I took the net amount of what we had accrued, less the 50% that's in the number, divided it by the number of weeks that had elapsed in the fiscal year, and multiplied it times 52,
Yeah.
we came up with about 1.1 million. So what it indicated, the reason I put the people through the exercise here,
Yeah.
because it's showing a top-line building permit fee growth off of what was traditionally about 875,000.
Yeah, we were usually in the
Yes.
800,000 for many years
Right.
prior to this. Right, okay.
So, knowing what I have coming and then analyzing the history, I was comfortable in adding more dollars to what had traditionally been an $875,000 line.
Right, so it went from the 1.1, which was in the public hearing budget, to 1.3 for this,
Well,
right?
Let's just double,
1.2?
let's just check that out, okay?
Yeah, the April 3rd public hearing book had 1.1 million on the building.
1.3, yeah.
1.3.
So it went from I just wondered if it could be, talk about revenue sources, anticipating more money. I thought that could be higher, but the problem is, it's really more of a shift from what we anticipated this year trickling into next year, because I think the bulk of the building fees, not the fire fees,
Right.
the building fees for Amazon are going to be in next fiscal year.
Yeah.
Because we only have 2 months and
Right.
2 weeks left in this current fiscal year. I don't, they're still moving dirt around up there.
So I'm comfortable with the number.
Okay.
Because I'm projecting ahead now, if we fall short next year, I'm sure you'll remind me of that we fell short, Sally,
May now.
But I would expect you to. I would expect anybody to. But, I just illustrated the number of projects that I have on the drawing
Yeah.
board, and I failed to mention I've got 2 hotel projects I'm working on in town.
Right.
So these are all going to be generating building permit fees, so I'm very comfortable with the 1.3.
Right, and I think it could be even higher, because I think a lot of the Amazon building fee is going to
Yeah.
happen in the next fiscal year. That's what I'm saying.
So-
That's pretty much.
All right, I mean, look.
I mean, I know you upped it 200,
Right.
but
I'm-
it is, I don't want to, I can't change anything now. Your resolutions are done,
So
but
you thought maybe there was some more room in there then?
because I see a shift of what we anticipated for this fiscal year occurring next fiscal
Okay.
year. As you know, there was a delay. They were thinking about changing the footprint,
Right.
and there was talk of having to do a new tax incentive agreement, and
Mm-hmm.
that kind of put the construction on hold for about 5 or 6 months that we didn't think.
That's right.
Right? So
That's exactly right,
that's, what did you just say? I'm exactly right?
Well,
Just say that louder.
It would have been 5 or 6 months, you're exactly right. If we had to go back to the original format, we had a
Right.
5 or 6 month delay, so I'm agreeing with you.
I know, I'm so happy.
Is there enough
Okay.
in there to change the collection rate?
And my final question is about the 100,000 that was cut for the stormwater mapping. I know you said you were going to put it off to next year. Is that something that
No,
can
I'm
be?
sorry.
What?
LoSiP.
LoSiP.
It's
Oh, I'm
sorry,
sorry.
the 2 tanks are getting pushed to next year. The mapping's being funded with LoSiP money.
Sally's talking about the GIS mapping.
Yes, it's being funded
Yeah,
with
the
LoSiP.
the storm, because that's a statutory mandate.
Yes.
and So that is going to be funded for this year.
With LoSiP money.
Right, with
I didn't hear that in
Yeah,
the
with those.
opening. Okay, that makes me feel better, because
Yes.
that's a statutory requirement,
Yes.
and I'm sure our Public Works Director will be happy to know it's still taking place.
It is.
Thank you.
Okay,
you.
thanks.
Yes.
Wait.
It's you.
Mary White, Summer Lane. First question, did the Board of Finance receive my letter
No,
Wait, I got one letter from,
No, not
from me?
We got
Is there a
one last month.
yes.
Oh, is it recently?
No, it was,
Last month?
Well, it was dated April 2nd,
yeah, I was gonna say.
so still this month.
Yeah, yeah.
You did get it, okay. I have a question regarding the contingency fund. Last we heard there was $550,000 in that fund, and we heard tonight that $140,000 of that money is going to the fire department to be used in the future. Can you
No.
tell me, is that correct? Or not correct?
Potentially to be used.
Potentially.
I mean, yes.
Okay, so it's going to get its own line item
Yes.
in the budget, okay. Potentially to be used by them, okay. Can you tell me where the other $110,000 went? And is there now $300,000 in the
There's
contingency fund?
$300,000 in contingency, it was reduced. The other $100,000 is out of the budget,
So the other $110,000 is out?
out of the budget, yes.
Where did it go?
We
Like,
took it out. We just
We just took it out.
You just
Reduced the
took it
mill
out.
rate.
Reduce the mill rate.
You do, to reduce it? Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
All right, can you answer this question? Or is it not true that the $300,000 that is set aside in this contingency fund, that its purpose is for emergencies that take place in the town? Could you answer that?
That's fair, yeah.
That's
that-
fair.
That's
That's
a fair
fair,
statement,
okay.
yes.
And could you tell me, like, would an example of such emergency be like a boiler breaking down in a school? Or a fire apparatus that cannot be
Well,
repaired? Are those two examples?
Yes, in fact, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, Mary, we had an ambulance breakdown of one of our fire apparatus. We took it out of contingency, about $147,000. So consider this now. There was a snowstorm at that time. If we didn't have that contingency, we would have had to call a town meeting to appropriate that money out of the fund balance. So contingency gives us a fast way to handle an emergency. And a boiler at a school would be a good example, too, yes.
Okay. So in other words, this money is not just for like natural disasters, it's for town?
For town.
Emergencies?
It's for town
Okay.
emergencies, yes.
Yeah, okay. So I think everybody knows by now that what my position is, that the 8 firefighters requested by the paramedics requested by the fire chief represent a critical need. So obviously, I'm disappointed that, to quote someone else, that the can is being kicked down the road. Can you tell me what is the percentage of the fund balance now? It is no longer 8%. It is less because
It's less than 8%.
650,000 was moved.
6, 7, 7, maybe?
What is it?
No, 7, 7,
Seven.
7.7, 7, 8.
Okay.
In the ballpark, depending on what happens into this fiscal year.
Okay. Can you, someone answer the question? The $250 money that the town was slated to receive for the partial reimbursement of the open space purchase of the 29.55 acres at 182 Kings Highway, has that money come in yet?
I believe it has, and it's in the capital project to offset the cost of the land. And that's all we could use it for.
That's all you can use it for?
Right.
Okay.
It would just lower our cost, and that's all we could do.
Right, okay, so it can't be used
No.
in elsewhere?
No.
Okay, thanks. Is it still true that 2,840,000 equals a mill?
Approximately, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then 1,420,000 is half a mill,
Roughly. Yep.
and 710,000 is a quarter of a mill. And then going further, 350,000, 0.125 mils, okay? So it would be fair, would it not, to say that $500,000 could fund 4 firefighters? And so that would be less than 0.25 mils, but more than 0.125. Would that be correct?
I don't think so.
Uh,
I think.
Well, we were told it's $1 million for 8.
Who said it was $1 million for 8?
Right.
Well, that's
what
what's
it
been
was?
saying for
Well,
about 6 months now.
Well, the fully
It's
loaded
600,000,
Maybe
I think,
more
in
than
the fire chief's budget,
Yeah,
but with
benefits.
benefits and so
Yeah,
forth,
there's benefits, payroll,
about
taxes,
$1
insurance.
million for 8 is
Roughly.
kind of what we're
Yeah.
going with.
Roughly,
It's
right.
not an exact science, but,
Right.
so then
More.
half of that
More than that.
is 500,000,
Okay.
give or take. Okay. Anyway, so in my opinion, some monies could have been directed, at least even if to do 2, okay, firefighters at $250,000. I'm just, like I said, I'm just very disappointed because somebody, could be somebody in this room, could somebody be watching the TV, somebody in this town, they're going to have a problem. They're going to have a health issue, and they're going to need a paramedic, and they're going to be the second or third call for service. And the fire department's paramedic is going to be out on the first call, and they're going to get AMR with 2 EMTs. And so that's a scary thought. I'm not a gambler, but apparently this town is gambling on people's lives. Anyway, I'd like to say there's an expression. It's the hand that rocks the cradle is the hand that rules the world. This is a poem by William Ross Wallace that praises motherhood. So I would like to put my own spin on that refrain, and that is the hands that control the checkbook are the hands that rule the town. And so we as taxpayers, all we can do is ask, plead, and beg, and then if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. So I would like to ask, perhaps I have to go to a fire commission meeting, but I would like to ask that a statistic begin as to how many people die in this town because they have received an EMT when they needed a paramedic. Because I think we're talking life and death, so let's get the facts. Let's hear it. So I'm going to request that we get that statistic.
Okay,
Thank you.
that's fine, thanks.
Anyone else? Well, she started, she's up already, so.
Nancy Barrett, Crestview Drive. So I would like to also address the framework that I provided to the board for examining the problem of emergency medical response to multiple simultaneous medical calls in North Haven. And as I mentioned in the framework, it is critically important to define the problem and have it defined separately from all of the variables that you can manipulate, such as staffing, to address the problem. So in my opinion, trying to increase firefighter staffing gradually over time is like trying to fill a bathtub 1 cup at a time. By the time it's full, the water is all cold and you haven't had a bath. And so we're really not addressing the problem if we try to do it gradually. And likewise, I think one of the contributing factors is the fact that we only have 9 paramedics on staff. We have 32 firefighters. So I think something that could be done immediately while this commission is trying to decide what can be done in the long term is to try to encourage the other firefighters to go through the training to become paramedics. And likewise, our police force to go through the training, as I did at Gateway, to become an EMT. Many police officers are already trained, but I think if all of our first responders had at least an EMT level of training, that I think the overall medical response in our town would increase significantly with a relatively small investment of our tax dollars. And likewise, I think the use of our volunteer firefighters, as Sally mentioned, I think is another huge resource that is being underutilized. All of our volunteer firefighters are also trained as EMTs, and yet they're not utilized for medical calls. So those are 3 different suggestions that I'd like to make that I think could address this problem immediately, while this framework is also being addressed for the long haul.
So I'm going to surprise you here tonight.
Oh, okay.
You and I have disagreed on so many issues in the past.
My goodness.
I'm
Is it Christmas? You're going to agree with me and Sally all in one night?
You know what? I think that you've made some good points.
Well,
and
thank you.
we will look at those points.
Thank you. So, and related to this, there's one other issue that I'd like to ask Mr. Frieda about. Could this same framework be used to evaluate the cost benefits of an AMR contract versus create a primary service area?
Oh, absolutely. But I got to be careful here on TV. I've already addressed that issue.
Okay.
Got some pushback on it, but the answer to your question is potentially yes. Okay.
Well, the reason I ask it too, and it pertains to this budget, is the MedCon numbers are up 80%. Right. So our current contract with AMR is extremely expensive, and we need to hold them accountable.
Well, let me explain something, Nancy, okay? There's a misnomer about MedCom. Mm-hmm. MedCom is an entity that is comprised of 8 or 9 fire chiefs in the area, all of the municipalities use AMR.
Okay.
MedCom's executive board consists of me as chairman, Mayor Harp as secretary, and I just appointed Mayor Nancy Rossi in West Haven as vice chair. MedCom is an entity that uses AMR as a contract carrier. We've added some more expenses to it, which is still less than the $53,000 we were spending when we were CMed. That was more of a entity that included infrastructure, manpower and women power that were part of CMed. There's no manpower or women power that are part of any infrastructure network at MedCom. It's the fire chiefs that are the operational board, and the chief elected officials who are the executive board, and the fire chiefs are managing AMR. So it's not so much that the cost of AMR goes up. We're looking at expenses that maybe we can add that would help us maybe from a technology standpoint, as an example. One of the things is I would love to see, and we're not there yet, us be able to track the AMR ambulance cars, just for North Haven, to see where they are. That would enhance mutual aid.
I agree.
People don't realize how much time yours truly has spent on this issue as chairman of both CMed and MedCom. But the average person in the public doesn't understand really what MedCom is, nor would I expect them to. So hopefully that's an explanation. So we added a little bit in the MedCom budget because we may look to see how we can enhance some technology. We wanted the money in there to see what we can better do to track our contracted carrier.
Okay,
Okay?
great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so that takes care of that issue. Let's see. At the last Board of Finance meeting, this is kind of just a general housekeeping question. Why were the three budget numbers and the corresponding mill rate increase of 1.66 that were approved by the Board of Finance at the last meeting, those were not the numbers that were actually presented at the public hearing? Now, they were off by just a little bit, but if the board goes through the exercise of actually voting on specific numbers and a specific mill rate increase, it concerned me that those numbers were not presented. And again, I understand that it's all in this spectrum of several drafts of the budget, but now we're at the position where you've now voted on another set of three numbers and another mill rate increase, and I'm just somewhat concerned that those numbers will not be the numbers that we see either at the next town meeting, which is on May 7th, or at the referendum vote on the 15th.
So sure.
Yeah, no, what happened was, they vote on the expenditure, town, Board of Ed, and the total, and that's what was in the budget. What changed was, I had new numbers on the assessment of the property after the post-BAA went through their process. So there was a new grand list number, so that changed what the mill rate was. They don't vote on the mill rate yet, that's not gonna be voted on until after the referendum. But that's just put in there so you have an idea where it is.
But all, the three numbers were voted on.
Right.
And those three numbers
Expenditure.
changed, and then
No,
the
those numbers were the same.
1.66 number changed to a 1.71.
That was
at the-
because of the grand list. I had post-BAA numbers for the grand list.
Right.
So I wanted to update that, and it brought it down a little bit. That's why the increase went up a little bit.
So Nancy, after the appeals on the grand list, this is a fluid process.
Right.
It's so linear up until the point we are tonight. So we had to make adjustments, because the grand list, after the adjustments, Ed had to go from the 1.66 to the 1.71. So these are normal tendencies and activities in municipal government. Now, from this point forward, this being the last Board of Finance meeting, the numbers that we agreed on tonight through those resolutions will be the ones that are presented on May 5th, I think the date is.
Right.
And if,
May 7th.
May 7th, and if there's no change as a result of public feedback, then what you hear tonight is going to be the referendum numbers.
So there's no obligation then to present the numbers at the public hearing that the Board of Finance approved for the public hearing?
No, they should have matched.
They should have matched?
Yeah, the
Okay.
expenditures matched.
Expenditure should have matched.
No, I'm saying the actual three numbers,
They did.
meaning the
Town, Board
the
of Ed,
town,
and the total.
Board of Ed, and the total were not the same numbers.
Yeah, they were.
Other than the grand list adjustment that Ed just referenced, I'm
Right.
not, and there was, are you referring to the Excel dilemma that Ed had? Is that what?
No,
Yeah, but
no,
that was
no.
in that was
No, no,
prior.
That was prior, okay.
No, this is,
Expenditures.
then I can show you later.
All right.
The numbers were different.
They should
So
match.
They should match.
Yes.
They didn't match.
Were
And
they
the
off
reason,
much?
the
Did you
reason
know
I'm bringing
something?
all this up is not just for, the next set of numbers, but also, Mike, you got up and said that you didn't like that budget.
That's right.
So if it is between March 21st and April 3rd, there was still this period of fluidity. I assumed it was fixed. But if it's still in this period of fluidity, then why wasn't the budget changed to say where it is today? If you didn't like it, why would you present a budget to the people of North Haven that you didn't like?
Well, because at that point in time, that's what the Board of Finance had come up with. And then this was the first time since I've been in office, Nancy, that I stood up there and said, I don't support this budget. So we came out of the Board of Finance meeting with a preliminary budget. I looked at it a second time. I didn't support it. That's not unusual. That's not unusual for any chief elected official. But for me, it was unusual because in the last 7 or 8 years, I supported every budget at first glance, but I didn't support this one. And as Rich said, he said it jokingly, and Mike gave us some orders. They weren't orders. They were saying, they basically were this: I'm not going to support this budget. I want it down. We're not going to go to the public with 1.7 mils. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. So, but it's just a normal process up until where we are now. So I'm not sure if that answers it, but I reserve the right after the March Board of Finance meeting to say I support it or don't support it.
Right. I thought that it should be one or the other. Either
understand.
you present it as the
Right.
Board of Finance approves it, or if it's still fluid, then actually make it change to the point that you actually can endorse it.
I see your point, but to that point, I knew there'd be another April meeting
Right.
that allowed us to do just what you suggested.
Right, right. It's just, if you had presented what you could actually support, then the public could actually give you feedback on something that was
Okay.
more realistic.
All right,
So,
okay.
just one last question. At this same last Board of Finance meeting, you started off the meeting by saying that the Board of Finance was proposing a $700,000 increase to the budget, $100,000 to the town and $600,000 to the BOE, because there was a spike in the February self-insurance claims data. And I actually spoke with the finance person for the Board of Ed, and she said there was no significant spike in February claims. So I'm just trying to understand what was the basis for this recommended increase of $700,000.
Yeah,
No, I'm sorry, who'd you speak with, Nancy? Who was it? You said you...
Tina Tangway.
Oh, okay. I don't know what she said, Ed, but you know?
No, because I haven't had a
No.
conversation with her.
well, we know during the process, the numbers,
We got
We
that.
met with them
they change the numbers
2
and
weeks
then
ago.
change the numbers again. That's why there's a reduction in this one.
We got that,
Medical.
Nancy, from Brown & Brown, their broker, whom we met with, so...
Right, no,
Yeah.
you had said that it was as a result of an email that you had received, but they didn't have any corresponding spike on the Board of Ed side. It could be that it was just on the town side,
No,
and that
actually,
we're, right?
they were pretty clear with us, it was on the town side. You know, there's a higher census data, more people, a younger
No,
group.
I know
you
it's many more people, so
Yeah.
if there is a spike, it should be noticeable, but she said that there was no
I'm
such.
surprised to hear that, because
Right.
we based it on what their
Right.
broker told us, so,
Okay.
okay.
All right, that's all.
Very good.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much.
Okay.
Anyone else? Yes.
Yeah.
Jenny Caldwell, Kimberly Circle. I'll be quick. The first thing I just want to say was it was really nice to see a board having a debate about issues and making compromises, and so I just want to say that was really good to see.
Well, I gotta say, we've always done that. And I would almost go say maybe the last 6 or 8 years, we've been pretty much, or more often than not, unanimous on our votes.
But it's nice to hear, Jenny, thank you for saying that.
It
Thank
was
you.
nice to see, to see because a lot of times you come and it's just presenting and Mike might ask a couple of questions, but this was like a nice little debate and a compromise, so I thought that was good. I mentioned last year, and I'm just going to keep recommending this, that I feel like the Board of Ed and the Board of Finance are functioning so separately. And if you look at other towns, there are more meetings, collaborative meetings, throughout the budgeting process. Like Guilford, they actually start their budgeting process in October, and the board ends up with a budget much earlier than our board does, and they meet with the Board of Finance, and then go back and do some changes based on that, and they have multiple meetings throughout before they actually present to the town. And it just seems that if you go to a Board of Ed meeting and you go to the Board of Finance meetings, you often see a different presentation of what's going on, for, like what Nancy said. So I just, given the fact that the Board of Ed has such a big portion of the town's budget, it would be, I think, beneficial to everyone if the two groups work together during budget season. And then the other thing I'm going to say, Mike had mentioned that the Board of Ed budget is very austere, and I think it's true. They're very austere when it comes to books and supplies and field trips. I think there are other areas where I would like to see the Board of Ed doing some more true analysis of where the money is going, because I do think there are places that they can go to look at where their money is being spent and whether that's being efficient or not. So maybe if the Board of Finance and the Board of Ed work together, maybe the more of that would happen. So that was one piece. I had a quick question. What is the police reader that you guys were talking about?
It's a plate reader.
Plate reader. And what is it?
It mounts in the car, and they can see the license plates of vehicles that are in the general area of the car. Don't ask me how it works. I have no idea.
Okay. And the benefit of it is
If there's a stolen car, if there's a car that just was reported stolen,
then they can locate
they
them
can find it a
earlier.
lot faster.
Okay, all right.
Or if there's cars that have been known to be associated with burglaries and they see it driving through town, it just alerts them.
Or Jenny, on a high-speed chase where, most police departments don't pursue aggressively because of public safety hazards, with oncoming cars or pedestrians or officers being in an unsafe position, the reader could maybe capture the license plate from a distance.
Okay.
Which is a good advantage.
Okay. And then the last comment I just have is around the fire personnel. I am also very concerned. I think I wasn't aware as a resident of North Haven that that our fire services. First, I didn't realize that the fire department is only at the command center as far as it being staffed on a regular basis. So if you live in another part of town, from what I'm hearing, that it takes quite a while for the 8-10 minutes for the fire department to get to an area of North Haven. To me, that's a big concern. As somebody who's had a fire in the middle of the night, it can make a big difference whether the fire department gets there in 2 minutes versus whether they get there in 10. So I'm glad you have somebody, a group that's coming together to analyze the situation. But I also feel like we really need to not hold off on having critical services that, not just the medical. I hear the medical is a big part, but you also need to have a fire department that can respond to emergencies and do it rapidly. And I'm certainly going to go to more fire commission meetings and hear a little bit more about what's going on, because I was just completely unaware until all of the topic about the fire department came on, that you wouldn't be able to pick up the phone and call 911 and say, I need a fire, I need emergency personnel, and not have them there just quickly. It just never occurred to me. So.
Yeah, look, this is an issue we're really trying to figure out. I don't want to minimize it. I'm proud of our North Haven Fire Department. I really am. I'm proud of each and every one of those men and women that work there. However, if we lived in Cheshire or Trumbull or Orange, there's no paid fire department. There's no paramedic service. Everything's outsourced.
I wouldn't live in those towns.
Okay. So I'm just saying that.
I'll tell you, I wouldn't. If it was an all volunteer fire department, I wouldn't live in that town, because I just it leaves you at the mercy of the volunteer fire department. Not that the firefighters that are volunteers aren't don't have great skills, but it's just that you have to rely on the fact that the volunteers that you need at the time of an emergency are going to be there.
And again, I don't want to minimize this, because we have to improve. That's why I've come up with this compromise. But even the big city mayors tell me, in surge times, they can't make the calls. It's not unique to North Haven. Every municipality is going through this. That doesn't justify it. I want to be very clear to those watching on TV. We're trying to improve this, but this is not a situation that only North Haven is in. I've got big city mayors telling me they can't, their firefighters, their paramedics, they can't get there when there's a surge.
Well, then we need to be looking to other states and other places where that's not necessarily an issue. And maybe, maybe it is that you don't have enough fire departments that are.
This issue's gonna be solved. You gotta tell it, we're gonna fix it.
We're going to fix it. We're going to
Well,
get there.
I also support the fire department, and I'm sure they're a great fire department, but if they're understaffed or if there are things they don't have that they need, it is a concern. Especially that you're getting ready to bring in an assisted living facility, and that's going to increase the medical calls quite a bit.
Yeah, no, the first thing is to relieve the pressure of
Right.
non-critical calls. And,
Yes.
and he's on that. He's on it, he's assured me of that.
Yes.
And I think that's gonna be a big step toward the reduction of simultaneous calls.
So we're not disagreeing with you, Jenny. We're just trying to say that we've got a plan. We're going to try to solve this. But I don't want anyone to think, gee, I live in North Haven. North Haven's the only town that has this problem. We're far better off than a lot of cities and towns, and maybe perhaps not as robust as others.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved?
Make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
We're adjourned.
Okay.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the Town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.